Welcome to Exponential's next podcast series, Ministry Reimagined. As culture shifts and new challenges emerge, ministry is being reshaped in real time. In this series, we explore how leaders across the U.S. are rethinking the way they live, lead, and serve. Each episode offers a snapshot of innovation featuring fresh ideas, bold strategies, and powerful stories that are reshaping the future of ministry. Hi, my name is Tom Planck, and I'm the director of Next Ventures. We're calling today's episode Reimagining Ministry in a Digital Age. This episode, we have Anne Bosarge, founder of Digital Discipleship, and Mark Lutz, founder and lead pastor of Lutz Digital Church, joining us. Today, we will explore the digital platforms that are transforming the way we reach people, disciple believers, and form authentic communities. We are so excited to have you all on the call today. Can't wait to hear your insights and your experiences. To kick us off, gang, just tell us a little bit, share a little bit about just your journey with Jesus and how it's kind of led you all to your current ministry post. And we'll let you go first, and then Mark can follow up.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having us here. I just am thrilled to be able to share what God is doing in digital discipleship. So God led me down this path in my life in a very winding way. I started out as an elementary school teacher, and then I started writing curriculum for the Department of Education when the internet was a new thing. Mark, this was well before your time. It's dating me for sure.
Listen, I can remember. I can remember when we got dial-up in the house. I'm young. I'm not that young.
That's awesome.
So I helped to get teachers online and develop groups of teachers that would submit and write lesson plans. So I actually had groups of teachers that were collaborative, and we were doing all this work online together and all of this. And I got to do that work for 4 years before we had a new state superintendent that said, I think this internet thing, it's not really going to take off in education. So we need to pivot and go a different direction. And so I pivoted at that point, went into ministry, and began working as a children's director, and then moved to multi-campus director of a church with multiple campuses. And one of the things that still was deep inside my heart was the love for digital communications and how you can bring groups of people together in a place for a common purpose. And I happened to be working with a church staff that couldn't see the vision that I saw. And so I just kept coming to the table and asking and asking and asking. And then COVID hit. And then it's like, oh, well, now might be the time. So we actually started with an online women's ministry called Becoming More. And then that allowed us to expand into the online chapel, which became very quickly a global expression of a gathering place for people to learn about discipleship. And then awesome. From there, we actually got well beyond the scope of what our church thought we were going to be. They didn't really understand it. It was hard to contain it. So I said, I think God is calling me to pursue this thing. I took both Becoming More and the online chapel and formed Digital Discipleship. And we actually, a year later, added in a missional component because our community that was growing wanted to put their faith into action. And so we have a child sponsorship arm, which is our mission and ministry piece of what we do. So it all kind of started with my love and introduction to technology when it was all first coming on the scene. And then now it's so neat to see how God uses everything in your life to prepare you for where he eventually wants you to be.
Awesome. Mark, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, sure. So I started in ministry at like 20. Well, I was probably 17 when I really started in ministry. Professional, like vocationally, I guess, 22, did 6 years in youth ministry, 5 years as a discipleship pastor, both of those things being in the same church, rural, like very red, very farm country, Western Pennsylvania. We were a church of about 1,000 in a town of about 1,200. We're
Wow.
reaching 55 different zip codes, and I got to be part of a couple of different building projects, all of that sort of stuff. And so in all of that, our was the he's now the founding pastor, was looking towards handing off the church, and so there was a lot of feeling of like I might be the next in line to theoretically take over our church and lead us for the next chapter. And it was sort of like I can get into that a little bit later, but it was sort of like in that season that God really began to stir up my heart for not digital ministry actually, but the gaming community as a whole. And so I've been a gamer my entire life, and tabletop gaming. My background's all board games right now. I've been a Dungeons and Dragons player since sixth grade. Been playing with like the same group of dudes for like 25 years. And then I've been a heavy video gamer since I've been a kid. And so those things have never really worked well together. I discovered a church that existed online, and it's been around for like 7 or 8 years now, that sort of spawned out of a live streamer's content that he was doing quite well. And at the time they were God Squad Church, they're now XP. And so I sort of like plugged in. I tried to get plugged in there, but I kept falling through the cracks. And it just became kind of clear, like at some point, and I love XP and their senior pastor, Matt, and his wife, Amanda, are great people. And we have a really great relationship with them and work well with them. But it became clear that what was placing on my heart was very different than what existed. And so we really began working through like, what does it look like to launch a church for gamers that can't be in a physical location because gamers are global. It can't be on a Sunday morning. Gamers are asleep. It can't look the same because it's so countercultural. We were watching like really large, very successful churches, Life Church, other churches, who are launching live streams of their services on Twitch to just like literally crickets. Like no one was showing up. And it was
Mm.
just so very clear that they were not of that culture. So twitch.tv is where our sanctuary is. Discord's where the rest of our church building is. But like, um, Twitch has this really it's a really just so if you see sort of like any of the brain rot that you see in sort of like Gen Alpha right now, and they're saying things, they're saying like 6'7", or they're saying skibbity toilet, or they're saying like whatever the language is, right? And it's like I can't even follow it. I have literally no idea. I still volunteer in a children's ministry, so I have a couple of fifth and sixth graders, fourth and fifth graders that I minister to, and like I physically, and man, I have like no idea what they're talking about. All of that stuff comes out of Twitch culture. So all of the memes, all of that stuff comes out of Minecraft, comes out of Roblox, comes out of Twitch culture. And so I had been part of that culture for a long time. I know it really well. It is kind of like my home. These are my people. And so we launched a church in March of 21. And so like we were really wrestling with it in 2019. We were getting ready to like really announce that we were going to do something new missionally in 2020, and then like Anne had said, like the COVID hit and my state got really shut down. We put everything on the back burner, but it just couldn't stay off the back burner. Like I went from like working on my team, just locking horns with everybody. And just because God had moved me to something else and I just didn't want to admit to it. And so we took about August of 2020, worked with Stadia for church planting, became their first digital launch. And then we spent about, I don't know, about 9 months, something like that, 6 months fundraising and getting ready to launch, which we launched unlike other digital ministries in the fact, like we launched like a church plant. So we fundraised, a couple $100,000. We built a studio. We did a lot of the stuff that you might do for salaries and for like a launch large model, but we were doing that with smaller overhead because we didn't have a building. So we launched in
Sure.
March of 21. So now we're about 4.5 years in. We became financially stable to like support my salary through tithes and offerings and some little bit of outside support remaining a couple of years ago, and then really a blitz to expand our staff and expand our reach. And so now we have 3 full-time pastors, myself, our lead pastor, and then Pastor Dalton, who's our community discipleship pastor in Wichita, and our creative pastor, Pastor Andy, who's in Tampa. And then we have a couple of part-timers, a video director and an admin, Greg Sam. And so, we're like really, really, if you've watched like our video series from this past year at Exponential on digital church planning next, like we're really, really intentional about calling ourselves a church, and we're really careful about what that means. And so for us, we looked at Acts chapter 2. We're not just a ministry, we're not just a mission, we're not just an outreach, we are a church. Acts 2 gave a series of devotions, which in Greek means to steadfastly continue in. And so they steadfastly continued in the apostles' teaching, in prayer, in worship, in generosity, in community, and I'm gonna end up and in the sacraments. And so like it's really important that we gather to steadfastly continue in the same things that defined the first church. Because we all know the church is not a building, it's people, but it's not just people, it's people with a shared, steadfast devotion to a set grouping of principles that make their identity. And so we are really intentional about like, it's a super simple, it's really stripped back, it's not heavy events, it's all relationship driven. And so it's all about getting people into relationships, getting people into community. It's all of the stuff that you would do in a physical church, except we just do it through digital mediums.
Good. It's awesome. I'm guessing both of you had some kind of an aha moment when you realized the church needs to be reimagined in the digital space. And you've kind of hinted at that, but I'm just curious if either you've kind of had that big aha moment where like, hey, we've got to reimagine this. We got to figure it a different way. You have an aha moment you can share with us?
I think for me, it was when I started to reimagine platforms as place.
Amen.
That really, when we think about all of the different ways and places that we are instructed to go as believers and to share the gospel, we would be negligent if we did not look at all the places where people gather. And one of the things, so I also work with the United Methodist Church and do church planting. And one of the things that I tell people is you go where the people are. You don't say, hey, come to me, but you go where the people are.
That's good.
And I think that this is a beautiful example of being willing to go where people are. I think so often the church has this mindset of, no, we have to be geographically located in this place at this time on this schedule. And you isolate so many people who will never go to that place at that certain time on that certain day. Think about all the people that for church is not attainable to them. And working with a global ministry now through digital discipleship, we're able to connect with people who geographically could not ever go to a church. We've connected with people in the UAE who are working as contracted household help and things like that, and they don't get a day off, and so they've been able to make this their community of faith. And so I think we just have to start thinking about platforms not as some theoretical cloud in the sky, but just like we think of a geographic location. We talk about church deserts. Where are there church deserts that we can come in and plant a physical church? Well, it's the same thing in digital spaces. Where are there deserts of communities of believers that there are people already hanging there? And how can we come in and take the gospel into those places?
It's awesome. Very powerful.
I love that. We talk a lot in everything that we do about ideological shifts. And in one of those, it's funny, you like tapped into two of them. One of them is the shift from platform to relationship. Stop thinking about what platform you are and start thinking about how you're going to build relationships with people and how you're going to get to people, hear their stories. And the other one we talk about is moving from tools to spaces, right? It was at one point that we saw the internet as a tool, right? We had Wikipedia. I remember I was taught how to use encyclopedias in 6th grade. I was taught how to use a Yahoo search bar in 8th grade, but I also got AOL Instant Messenger in 8th grade. And that was the place that I first experienced ministry, which was talking to people over AAM when I got home from school, right? So the internet is a tool, but the internet is also a place. As it turns out, like the older you are, the more I think solidified your brain was when you first experienced the internet, the less likely you seem to be able to view the internet as a place, and the more likely you are to only see the internet as a tool, which I think is one of the biggest challenges in the church right now. Generationally, most of the people who are leading churches right now now are in sort of the Xer generation. Most of those individuals were mid-college to finishing college and seminary when the internet first came out in 1990. Because of that, their way of thinking about the world was relatively solidified before the internet was introduced. Whereas like my daughter's generation will never be able to experience a world without
Yeah.
limitless information. So they swim in it. So they form digital identities simultaneously to physical identities.
Yeah.
For me, the aha moment for me was actually watching Twitch. So I'm watching Twitch, and at the time, I had followed a young guy named Tyler who was streaming out of his bedroom, playing PUBG, and then he blew up in Fortnite. He got one of the biggest kill streaks in Fortnite when the game was brand new and it was sort of in like closed beta. But most people don't know him as Tyler. Most people know him as Ninja. And so Ninja started streaming with Dr. Lupo and Tim the Tat Man, and they would run trios. And at the time, Ninja was streaming to about 120,000 people every moment for about 40 to 50 hours a week. Tim was streaming to about 80, and Lupo was like 65 to 80,000 people. And so we were looking at like, almost 300,000 people at any given time, millions and millions of people over the course of a week that were tuning in to watch the three of these guys play together. And I said, man, and at that time, and still, the largest category on Twitch was not Fortnite. It was just chatting. And so we were seeing people who were just watching just chatting streams at any given time, 24/7, 300 to 500,000 people are watching people just talking
Amazing.
to their stream. And I said, people here are looking for community. They're looking for truth. If this community can support people like Tyler, like Lupo, like Tim the Tat Man, then this can and should be able to support a church. This supports every other form of industry. Why is this community incapable of supporting a church? Certainly the financial backing is there for it. That could exist without a problem. What we thought would be impossible to financially support a digital expression of church surely can't be impossible, because it supports it supports the biggest industry in entertainment. It might be one of the biggest industries in the world is gaming right now. And so as I looked at it, I said, man, there's so many people who are here on this space looking for truth, not just entertainment, and there's no place for them to receive it. What's really interesting is Tyler now leads some like literally scripture reading and stuff on his stream. He's had some really big come to Jesus moments. His brothers are Roman Catholic, and Tyler grew up in faith. And so it's been cool to see as he's transitioned into this new season of life, how that's impacting now thousands and thousands of people as he's going back to church and such. But that was the aha moment for me. Like, I'm watching the influence. These guys have more influence over the worldview of the next generation than any pastor on the planet, and they're seamlessly broadcasting it completely unfiltered 50 hours a week. Like, these guys are going to impact the emerging generations more than any Christian on the whole planet right now. And so if we aren't here, we are going to lose an entire generation. Because this is where their influence, their worldview, their beliefs are being forged and formed, is in these streams.
Yeah, it's powerful, man. I think what I love most about what you all are doing is that at the core is disciple making. I would imagine there's some misconceptions that come with disciple making in digital spaces. Talk to us about, both of you at some point, and you can go first. Just, what's the biggest misconceptions people might have about online disciple making?
So I work with physical churches, and in addition to what I do online, and even just this last weekend, I bumped up against someone that said, well, all these people going to church online, that's the reason the church is in decline. And I'm like, digital church is not the reason that the church is in decline. And I think that is one of the misnomers. It's one of the myths that somehow that is the cause, and it's not a reason for self-reflection in a physical church structure. The reason that the church is in decline is because people are not prioritizing connections and relationship. They're not prioritizing discipleship, which is, to your point, that both of these ministries are very heavy in discipleship. And I think that is one of the big things. It's almost as if going to a building is the point, and that is not the point. I know that I've had someone say to me, well, Anne, I just don't think it's right that you are double discipling people. And, people should be going to a church and then they're hearing from you online. And I was just like, I need to be triple discipled, quadruple discipled, whatever it takes.
Sure.
Like I need to be discipled all the way around. And so I think that sometimes people in physical churches, established churches, don't understand the relational connection that people can have online, that those relationships are real, that those connections that we are making create transformation in the hearts and the minds of people, and that those are not just things that exist in an ethereal, internet cloud somewhere, that is there is difference. There is radical transformation that is happening among people in these ministries every single day. And to discount that is discounting the Holy Spirit's ability to work in any kind of environment that the Spirit wants to work in. I would never want to deal with the Spirit. You have to be in a building and you cannot be in that space. So I think there's just, there's a little bit of apprehension perhaps that leads to that, a little bit of fear or loss or a spirit of competition or something, but those two things are not in competition. We are all working together to make disciples of Jesus Christ so that we see lives changed. And I think that that's often a misnomer.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, we could just rack up a whole bunch of stories. I've been trying to be more tame about sharing names to the best of my ability, just because I don't really want our church family to be on display for everybody else to prove a point, which I've historically done pretty bad job at. But like discipleship isn't optional for the church. You're not called to make converts or to hold services. You're called to make disciples.
Yeah, that's right.
So in some ways, I think our church is more a church than a great number of physical churches are a church. We have a lot of physical churches who are just gathering. We're not discipling. And I think that is really sad in some ways. And so, I could tell story after story. Well, there's one couple comes into our church. They're both sort of like on the edge of ending their marriage. She really deconstructed, really went left. He responded by going really far right, dealing with a bit of a drinking issue, comes in, really begins to have his life changed, stops drinking, serves on a team, starts giving. She wants nothing to do with it. We start talking about heaven, hell, and the apocalypse, and we spent 13 weeks in it, and she starts listening over his shoulder, and then she starts commenting in chat, and then she starts asking questions, and then she joins our Discord, and then she starts building relationships. And the week after that series, we launched into one called on Discipleship, and so she gives her life to Jesus with her husband that night at their bedside, and then they start reading their Bible together, and now they're hosting. We call them tables, and so you might share a potluck or a meal. We call our team table setters, and so they just host game nights and hangouts in places for people to build relationships. And so they start setting tables together and start building relationships inside the community. Join small groups, start being discipled, start getting invested. She joins our teams,
awesome.
Joins our prayer team, starts praying for people. And this is an anonymous story amongst for us. Originally it was we started capturing these stories in the beginning, and then eventually it was we have so many at this point that it's I don't need to justify the existence of our church or the impact of our church any longer. And I'm not saying, Tom, you're asking me to do that. I'm just saying there's a story, but I'm not these aren't amorphous anonymous people, right?
Totally.
Negative and positive, Becca and Joe, right? Them and their two sons, we have such deep relationship with. Doc and Tell, we have incredibly, I've dedicated their sons to the Lord alive on the internet with our church family. I've been in Africa twice with Doc. My wife's an accountability partner with Tell, right? Our team is in the absolute trenches of addiction and discipleship and prayer and walking with people in a way that is more real here at Lutz than in any physical church that I've ever experienced. And I served in a really freaking healthy church. I served in a really robust, really healthy, discipleship focused, evangelistically bent church. So I had that experience. And at Lutz, I have that, but it's amped. It's just like it's freaking cranked up to the next degree
Yeah.
because the digital space does not get bogged down with event-driven ministry because there's just
Hmm.
less temptation to run events inside of digital space. So what do you have? Well, the digital space is where about 70% of the current generation, millennials and down, go to find any sort of sense of community. Because we've eliminated all third spaces, this is where people go to connect.
Yeah.
People don't actually, younger people do not go to the internet to gain knowledge or to equip themselves. They do,
Yeah.
but they're more likely now to go
Hmm.
there. Like statistically, more people find their future husband and wife in online dating sites now than they do through friends.
Yeah.
And so, like, this
Yeah.
is the primary place that people come to connect. And so, it's not it should not be a surprise to us, right? That if you're looking to how to connect with the emerging generations, millennials and down, that if the best place to connect with them is actually online. Like that is
Yeah.
the number one place they connect. That is the best place for them to be transparent. It is the place they're most likely to tell you about what's going on in their life. It's the place that you most likely have a chance to positively impact their spiritual life. You actually have a better chance digitally, statistically, you have a better chance digitally to impact their life spiritually than you do physically. And so, like,
Yeah.
even statistically, it doesn't make sense for us to just be trying to gather inside of physical spaces.
Yeah. So good. And I think you guys have both hinted to this, but you're really eliminating the barrier, the cultural barriers required to attend a building or attend a worship experience, right? You're literally going, to the spaces or creating spaces where they are, which I really love. And talk to us a little bit about how digital ministry aligns with the church's mission to make disciples of all nations. Drill down on that kind of an idea for us just a little bit.
Yeah, I think that digital platforms give us the opportunity to be in people's lives at whatever time they need us. One of the phrases that we have said over and over since the beginning in digital discipleship is right where you are, right when you need us. And I think that that's so true. Oftentimes in an in-person environment, my life doesn't fall apart at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. My life falls apart on Tuesday night
Right.
at 9 o'clock, right? When I
Right.
need some encouragement, when I need something like that. And so it really, it does not compete with, it goes hand in hand with people that are engaged with other kinds of communities throughout their life and throughout the globe. And I think it's so beautiful that we have the opportunity to engage with people each and every day. I mean, think about how much time people spend online. There are lots of different studies depending on age levels and all this kind of stuff, but on average, it's like 3 to 6 hours a day you spend online. Well, what if part of that time could be church every single day? And so I think that consistency of a connection actually deepens the relationship, and it helps equip people right where they are, right when they need it. They know that they can connect with
It's
a
good.
community of faith that will walk with them, whatever it is that's going on.
Yeah, it's really good. I would imagine that there's probably a leader or two listening to this pod or watching this video on YouTube, and they're hesitant or unsure about stepping into digital spaces or empowering people to step into digital spaces. I'd love to hear both of you speak to the leader that's hesitant or unsure. What would you say to them? Mark, we'll let you lead off.
Yeah, I would say I think most leaders are hesitant because they don't understand it and they feel ill-equipped to step into it. And so for them, their understanding of digital space is social media influence, which is its own beast, but it's not what we're doing. We're not trying to build a follower base so that we can sell fitness apparel, right? Like we're trying to meet people where they are, who otherwise would, we say all the time, our church is for people who'd rather go to hell than go back to church. And as it turns out, the people who walk through your door digitally have the same problems as the people that walk through your
Yeah.
door physically.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, they need the same solutions. And you don't need a different skill set to be able to meet any of those needs. I don't do, like, there's a few things that I learned that I had to learn, right? And so, like, for years prior to launching Lutz, I was completely absent from social media. I had very little digital footprint, right? I was the micro church guy, right? I was not the digital guy. In fact, I thought the digital church implementation was heretical. And so like God had to really challenge me on that. So I'm not coming from like, I've always been a techie and I'm just like pro technology. I came from a background of someone who was a pornography addict, who really deeply struggled with the internet, who was a gaming addict, who felt like these things were of the devil. And so,
Mm,
like, as somebody who came from that world, to be asked to step into a world that I deeply understand and people that I deeply love, but to do things in a way that makes me wildly uncomfortable, like I can say with some level of authority and confidence, I think, to the average person who's hesitant about getting involved here, like the skills that you have developed as a pastor inside of your physical setting are the same exact skills that you will use
yeah.
in the digital setting. I learned how to set up cameras and lights. You don't need to learn how to do that to meet people where they are. The
Yeah.
majority of what I do ministry wise, I just sit with people. I hear people's stories. And instead of doing it at a coffee shop, I do it over a Zoom call. And as it turns out, a Zoom call is not only just as viable, it actually is usually more effective. People feel
Hmm.
more comfortable with the separation of a screen than they do sitting across from me at a coffee
Yeah.
shop. They're not in a public space. People can't hear them. I do so much more counseling, ministering, and discipling online because of the internet, because of the anonymous nature of it. And many of those people, those anonymous things have broken down. Like we're so intentional with people knowing our real names and where we really live and like what's really going on in our lives. And so like our transparency inside of our church and our digital ministry is so much higher than any physical church that I was a part of. There's so many more people that I think know my phone number just in my digital church than ever had it inside of the physical church that I serve. And so, and like, that's just because like we're genuinely doing life together. And I would also say you might think like, man, it's not real. I just as quickly as I could, I pulled up a couple of stats. Like just in the last year, right? Like in September of 2024 to September of 2025, we've seen over 106,000 messages sent just in our Discord server, and we've seen
Wow.
people spend more than 14,000 hours in voice chats together in the
Wow.
last year. So the idea that community is impossible in this space, or like you're just spinning your wheels, is absurd. Like the numbers speak for themselves. Like we're not a giant church. You know, if you look statistically, we're worshiping 100 some people a weekend. We have 1,000 people in our Discord server, which we would kind of consider like our community or our town. And the fact that we're seeing like this type of engagement every single day from people all across the world, and our pastors are actively involved in shepherding all of these people who are engaging here, like that should show you like, no, this thing is real and community is possible if
Yeah.
you'll focus on the right things. And then also, if you're feeling intimidated, just realize, listen, I use all the same skills that I spent 11 years developing in a physical church. I don't use any ones for the most part that are different than that.
Yeah. It's good.
I think I would add to that and build on that. Equipment is not necessary.
Hmm.
For me, I have a phone, and this is what I use for everything that I do. A computer, a phone, like that's what you need. To Mark's point, the reason that you got into ministry is the same thing that you will find online,
Yeah.
because it is just another place with people who are hurting. And I would say, we often have this mindset of, yeah, but I got to have a good production and I got to have this, that, and the other thing. Look, people are not looking for production. They're not looking for perfection. What they're looking for is authenticity. They're looking for real people who are really struggling,
Yeah.
who are really trying, and they're looking to say, hey, this is a group of people that identify with me. And I think that is one of the reasons that people feel more comfortable talking and chatting and sharing online, just like Mark was saying, because there are conversations that I've had with people online from a pastoral standpoint that I never would have had with people in person. But they find themselves in a place with other people who are struggling, and they feel like, no, this person is really authentic. Anne is not some big production. She's not doing some big digital discipleship, is not doing some big digitally produced product. but it's just a group of people that are authentically trying to live out their faith. And so
Yeah,
I would
it's
say
good.
just let go of whatever mindset that you have that it needs to be produced and it needs to be perfect, and just be you and be authentic.
Yeah, that's
I would add
good.
this little caveat to that, and only like I would say you're right, Anne. Like in the end, people want to they just want to get to know you, right? And like I'm doing this call over a mic that was a hand-me-down right now and a Elgato webcam, right? It's a nice mic, but it's a mic that was a hand-me-down. I also have a studio with about $30,000 or $40,000 worth of equipment in it next door to me, right? And that's where we run our services from, and that's where I would usually podcast from if I didn't have friends that were podcasting in it right now. So I will say this. It isn't the most important thing, but it does depend a little bit on your platform, right? And what your approach is, right? So for Twitch, because there's a lot of Christian creators that have really, really low quality stuff, people will never click on you and never get in there and ever experience you if you don't get to a certain level of quality. Here's the
Yeah,
plus side. Even if you are aiming for a certain amount of quality to initially attract people, whether that be on YouTube or that be on Twitch, right? I think Facebook is a little bit different than that because it is more organic, more Facebook group oriented, right? At other platforms, I think it is a little bit different. Like even if they are, it's still cheaper. It's still cheaper, right? Like all in all, I know we have less than $100,000 in our studio and equipment in all 3 states that we have small studios, right? And we've been doing ministry out of that without rent for 4.5 years, and we've been doing it really effectively. And so even if you do feel like your church or somebody like you need to invest some money up front to be able to get some decent equipment, it is still cheaper than planting a physical church. And so
totally.
like yeah, it's like even the high end of it to a certain extent. Like there's a limit on your return on investment on the equipment that you can
Totally.
buy because you can only get so high quality of stuff out there to begin with for someone else to watch on their teeny little phone. And so yeah, but when it comes to like the relational stuff, which is Anne's doing like so much sort of like grassroots relationship to relationship, yeah, your phone, your webcam, a laptop, a
Yeah.
cheap laptop, like you can people are people, they just want to connect with you.
Yeah. So good. For the listeners new to this conversation, talk to us about what a typical week looks like for you all. Like we've heard hints of like engagement and but just drill down a little bit. What's a typical week look like for you all?
So a typical work week for me is we do a Sunday morning service that includes about a 15-minute teaching and a worship song. And we will, it's all pre-recorded because we are such a global group. We don't try to do anything scheduled. So we don't say it's at this time because everybody is literally in different time zones. So we gave that up a long time ago. So we have a weekly worship service that goes out on YouTube and Facebook. We have a big WhatsApp community as well with all of our
Yeah.
global people. And so we'll do a clip on WhatsApp. We do daily discipleship. That's our big thing. And the online chapel is the place where you find me and a cup of coffee and the Word of God every single day. And
Love that.
what we do is we have a reading list that goes out on Sunday so that everybody can be reading along and following along. And we do that on all of our major platforms, including TikTok. And so we have those daily expressions of faith as well. We do a live prayer on Facebook weekly. On Wednesdays every week, we have members of our team. So we have a global international leadership team that will also do a lot of teaching, and we will have and just conversations among all of our WhatsApp group leaders. We now have 20 groups on WhatsApp that are located geographically around the globe. And so we have a group leader leading those conversations every single day. But even this morning, I was online with some of our leaders planning an outreach trip to Mombasa, Kenya. So we have our group leader from Nairobi. We have 2 group leaders from Uganda, all going to meet up, going to go to a new group leader in Mombasa, Kenya. And we're trying to figure out what's the fastest and cheapest and easiest way to get them there. So, so those are the kinds of conversations that we have. And then I have a group of ladies that lead our Becoming More women's ministry that is online as well. And I am preparing to host them in my home as we go online with some of our earlier leaders and talk about what our new small group season looks like. So that's kind of a week for me. It looks very pastoral.
Love it.
Yeah.
Mark, how about you, bud? What's a week look like for you?
Yeah, I hate to say it's going to be super boring. It's going to look like any other pastor's week for the most part. On Monday morning, I meet with our lead admin, who's kind of like our buildings keeper, right? We go over stuff in the server. I pour into him. After that, I go into staff meeting, and we have a staff meeting. And after that, I meet with our financial admin, and we go over if we can pay people this month. And then I usually am working on sermons and filming social clips and doing a couple of other things. Catching up on Mondays. I record a video every week and post it for our entire team called Monday Thoughts. And so that goes out on Mondays. And then depending on the season, I'm either holding meetings Monday nights for team meetings, or I'm leading my small group. So I lead a men's ministry, and me and 3 other dudes. We got about 25 guys who are part of our men's ministry on Monday nights. Tuesdays, I wake up, I write sermons, I hold meetings, and then I'm off in the evenings. Wednesday, I wake up, I hold meetings, I finish a sermon for the following week. Wednesday night, we hold service, and so we're live on Wednesday night every week at 8:30 p.m. ET at twitch.tv/Lux Digital Church. And so I'm usually teaching. Our services are an hour and a half long, and so they are not short. We do opening with my wife and I, just sort of chatting on a couch or a couple of chairs, welcoming people in. Think of like people coming in through your welcome center or your narthex. And then we have worship. We pray over prayer concerns that are shared live during the night. We see hundreds of messages sent every night inside of our chats. We're constantly reading those, responding to them. And then I'm usually teaching, and I teach pretty long, teach anywhere from like 35 to 45 minutes. And then we have sort of like a worship song done by our worship team. These are all people spread all across the globe. They get sent click tracks. They record all separately. Our creative pastor then puts those things together with videos and audio and lyrics. And so we have like a bank of worship songs and tunes that have been recorded by our own church family that we're then play back. That's pre-recorded. Our initial worship is live, whether people come in from a call from far away or we have someone live in studio here in PA. And then after that, we do first step, next week. We go over a couple of things that are coming up. We answer questions that have come up in the chat from the couch. I usually do that. And then we go over to Discord and we hang out until like midnight or 1 in the morning. Our Lux Lurkers is usually there till 3 or 4 a.m. And we hang out and play games. We usually have 30 to 40 people who hang out afterwards, come to meet the pastor, receive prayer from our prayer rooms, stop by Next Step Center, go and hang out, play some Destiny together, play some League together, something like that. Thursday, I meet with my team in the morning to go over what we did in service the day before. And then I hold meetings pretty much with I have like a alternating meeting every week with some of my key staff members that I meet with on Thursday afternoons. And then I play a lot of catch up and hit the bank and the post office, my first time allowed out of the house for the week. And then Friday, I'm playing catch up. So I'm doing pastoral counseling calls. I usually have 4 or 5 meetings with people from our church who've asked to meet with me sometime throughout the week. A lot of those things get pushed to Friday morning. And then I'm the only pastor around that's off on Saturday and Sunday. So then I don't do anything Saturday, Sunday. Those are my Sabbath days. I spend time with my family, kick up my feet a little bit, play games myself, hang out with some members of our community in a non-official way. And that's my weekend usually.
That's awesome. It's awesome. Hey, before we wrap up, we like to give our presenters an opportunity just to share, like, hey, we've had this conversation. You shared your heart, your experience, your insights. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience as it relates to kind of digital ministry, something that's currently happening? Just give you one more opportunity to share.
I think the thing that I'd like to add is that digital ministry is different than having a digital footprint. A lot of churches have a digital footprint and they use it for communications and marketing, but that is not discipleship. So if you want to do discipleship digitally, if you want to do ministry digitally, it involves connection. It is a two-way street. It is not just a one-way communication tool, but it really is a place where you can connect with people.
Awesome.
I would just challenge any church that has an online campus and they're calling it a church. If your online campus is a live stream of your service on a Sunday morning, and the only thing the digital audience gets is your pastor says hello to them at the beginning of his sermon, and you have an anonymous person as your chat admin who's saying hello to people in the chat, that's not a digital church and it's not a campus. It's an amenity and it's an important amenity. But the
Yeah.
time, I don't care whether churches go for like a goods and services model where they're just providing an amenity for them, if they want to go with like a really robust all-in digital church expression. It doesn't. I think that churches should go or not have any digital at all. I think that there's room for all of that inside the kingdom, and I think there are healthy expressions and examples of that across the board. It's not that you need one model. It's not that you need to do what we're doing, but
Yeah.
since COVID, the time of not being sure what the heck you're doing is over. And
Yeah.
so I don't care what you do, but you need to start doing it intentionally.
Yeah.
Whatever it is
Yeah.
that you do it with a high level of intentionality and do it with a level of conviction. If you're calling it a
Mhm.
church, all of us are going to have to answer to God one day as pastors for what we called church. And so
Mhm.
if you're calling it a church, make sure it's a church. If it's
Yeah.
not a church, stop calling it a church. People aren't participating in church just by consuming stuff. They participate in church by actually participating. And so, like, be intentional about what you do, be selective about what you do, and like it. And if you need help with any of that, feel free. Like, reach out to me. I work with churches all the time to help them discern what model we want to use digitally, and then to go after that model unapologetically. And so,
Yeah.
don't feel the pressure from like all of the other thought leaders out there or whatever on what you have to do online. None of that matters. Like you need to figure out what is the right fit for your church. You just need to stop wandering around and not being sure what you're doing.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, one last question to both of you. If there's a listener that would like to connect further, connect with you online, or get involved in your ministry, give us the details before we bring this to a close today.
So we have all of our social channels and things like that linked on our website, which is digitaldiscipleship.online. And I actually have just finished a book on digital discipleship that should be available on Amazon by the time this airs. So if you want to learn
Awesome.
more, you guys can check out the book that is just Digital Discipleship, Reimagining the Great Commission in a Digital World. So that's how you can get a hold of us.
Awesome.
You can visit us at luxdigitalchurch.com. I didn't say this at the beginning. My name is Mark Lutz. It is not Lutz Digital Church. It is Lux, the Latin word for light, just to be clear. A lot of people think I named the church after myself. I did not. But we're like, the nice thing about being one of the only digital churches in existence is we just completely own our part of the internet. So you just look up Lux Digital Church or digital. If you just look up digital church and scroll a little bit, you will find, as soon as you get past all the TCD stuff, you will find us. And then also, like, if you just want to reach out to me, my email is mark@lux, LUX Digital Church. You can call me or send me a text message. My number is 724-650-5432. If you're listening to this Expo podcast and you would like some help and you'd like to talk digital ministry, or you're an online pastor somewhere and they're just not getting it, but you get it, like, and you just need someone to commiserate with and vent to, like, feel free to give me a call and or reach out to me over email.
Fantastic. Anne and Mark, thank you so much for sharing your experience and just the incredible work that you all are doing to advance the kingdom. It truly has been an honor to hear from both of you. And thank you to the listeners for joining us for today's episode. We hope today's conversation with Anne and Mark sparked fresh ideas and challenged your assumptions about what's possible in the digital space. I know it certainly did that for me. As we've heard today, technology isn't a replacement for authentic connection. It's a powerful, or just a replacement for authentic connection. It's a powerful tool to expand the gospel and disciple people wherever they are.